podcast. Jordan DeLuciano, as always, and joining me to talk about day 2 here at the national tournament is AAU college hockey chairman Mark Purowitz. Mark, welcome back to the podcast. And day 2 over and done with.
As always, thank you. It's first off, love the tournament, love the energy, love all the teams coming in and competing. Day 2 is fantastic. We had a great start to the day. We kicked off our inaugural women's division at 10 a.m. this morning between Tampa and Paul Smith's. Great game. And it just, as we continue to evolve AAU college hockey, we expanded the divisions this year. Adding women's was just another major step for us. I was part of the inaugural showcase that they did down in Georgia at the beginning of the season. And I think you and I chatted about this at one point. The young ladies have taken an ownership of this that are a little bit different than the men's teams, because they see themselves as role models for the younger girls that are coming up, and they want to get out there, they want to compete, they want to do the right thing, and they're getting out there in the community, they're working with the young girls teams, and you just see that in the way that they play, they compete. There's just so much passion about it, and it was just a great way to start up day 2.
And it's a good point you said about they feel like they're role models, because for the longest time, women's hockey, whether it be college hockey or just women's hockey in general, was never getting as much exposure. And nowadays, with the PWHL, college women's hockey is really growing. They feel like we got now all this exposure, all this eyes. It's on us to now lead the way to keep this going for the future talent behind us.
And you hear that in the interviews that the PWHL players are saying is, they're trailblazers. And even the players who have retired are saying, this is great for hockey. I wish it was around when we were still playing, but it's an absolutely great thing for hockey, long overdue. And, we're going to be continuing to grow women's next year. We'll wait until after the season to make some announcements, but I think it's just going to get bigger and better, and it'll become, a good division unto its own here that will have some growth and heft to it, so that, we'll have more than 4 teams at next year's tournament and years beyond that, which is fantastic.
And a little bit of out-of-conference exposure for the Tampa women's team that was running roughshod. And they get a little bit of taste of outside of their conference. Paul Smith's, was it 8-2 or 8-3? Yep. It was close for a while, but then you look at the end of the score, they ran away with the Paul Smiths at the end.
And I think we're generally seeing that, right? As we've evolved over the course of the last few years, we've seen a bit more interconference play, north going south, south going north. And it helps with creating a sense of not only better parity in the broader organization, but people are starting to see where the talent is shifting. And, we've certainly seen that here. In tournaments past, we've had actually pretty good parity where the middle of the pack teams were tightly coupled and they were beating some of the top 1 through 5 teams. I think what we've seen, especially with the expansion of Division 1, right? D2 and D3 haven't started yet, so we haven't witnessed it. But I think clearly over the course of the last 2 days, the top D1 teams have learned over the course of the last year what it takes to become that extra layer, that extra special team. And the top teams here have started to, on day 2, outdistance themselves from the middle to the lower pack. And that's manifested itself by the scores, right? You mentioned it before we got on. We've seen more lopsided scores this year than ever before. And it's not because the one team was playing the 16 team, right? The one team could be playing the 8, and we're still seeing that level of distance being formed by the top teams. And it's actually very good to see because it sets a role model for the other teams and how to develop their programs.
In the past, we saw a lot of parity. We saw I believe 2 years ago, 1 through 5 or 5 out of the 6 top teams were out after pool play.
Right.
But like you mentioned, over time, these elite programs start to figure it out. This is how you got to play. This is how you got to recover. This is how you got to bounce back after this day. And we saw every game today. I think the closest game was just now 5-1. Quinnipiac lost to Bonnie's. That was a 4-goal loss. Other than that, everything else was 6 goals, 5 goals. There was a lot of blowouts. And like you said, it's not 1 versus 16. There was a 5 versus 11 blowout. You know, there's 2 single-digit ranked teams. That was a blowout today. So a lot of teams figuring out how to win now at the national tournament.
Yeah, and what's interesting that in all of those games, except for 1 or 2, the first period was a 2-0, 2-1, 3-2, and then the more talented, better team said, "All right, I understand what we're doing now," and in the second, third period, just hit another gear, right? So I think the first period was more of a feeling out, and it gave an appearance that it was closer, and then that more talented team with the greater amount of experience said, "Okay, I see what we're doing now," and they just took it to a whole other level.
Could be a case of also now teams are understanding how to use their depth more. So the teams that are more deeper are now utilizing that deep depth to take advantage of the longevity of the game. Like you said, first period's a 1-1 game, let's say, but as the game goes on, my team's deeper than yours, let's say, I can wear you down, I can pull that lead away. And I think we saw a lot of that today. And now tomorrow, we got a lot of, I think we have 2 battle of 2-0s, winner go home matchups.
Yes.
One of them is going to be, I just finished Tampa running rough shot on Cortland. That was a 14-3 game. 2-0 Tampa, 2-0 Georgia. You can't ask for a better Friday night game tomorrow.
No, and then you've got Bonnie's, and who's Bonnie's one? Niagara?
No, Niagara's got South Carolina. It's another 2-0 game.
That's the other 2-0
game. Yep.
That's going to be 2 big games tomorrow, and Georgia Tampa just are just storied battles, so that's going to be a good one. But that other game, where you got north south, that's going to be really interesting. And I think what we've learned over the course of the last couple of years with more interconference play and geographically teams moving, they're getting a better understanding and an appreciation for the level of talent that exists in the north versus the south and vice versa. Those folks who grew up in the north naturally have a swagger about them that the north is better than the south in hockey. And the South, because they've gone to the traditional D1 schools and have gotten the greater level of coverage, they've got swagger, right? So now we have swagger meeting swagger at nationals, and it's been very, very interesting to see both their level of play, take it to a whole other level. But I think what it's also showing, not only the D1 teams, but the D2, D3, that schedules over the course of the next couple of years are going to need to change and to see much more interconference play to allow for an understanding of talent. The other thing we've seen also, our recruiting has gotten much better. A lot of our southern schools are recruiting from the north. So
Tampa's got like 5 kids from Long Island. On that team.
Exactly. So
no one from in-state. I think 1 player's in-state of Florida on Tampa.
And so you also get a New York style of play on a southern team, right? So that starts to mix things up as well. It's pretty neat.
And it's for the College Hockey South teams, it feels like something to prove because the last 2 years of the tournament, the championship 2 years ago was Upstate Binghamton and then New England Conference Babson. Last year, Empire Fairfield against Binghamton, Upstate New York. So the College Hockey South past 2 years, they get a lot of praise, a lot of the media coverage, but they're not being represented in that championship game the last 2 years. So they got something to prove, and South Carolina can move on tomorrow. We're going to get either Georgia or Tampa moving on tomorrow. So the College Hockey South will be moving on. It's just a matter of who.
Well, they did. And this is no disrespect to College Hockey South because, there are some good teams that made the quarters and semis last year. And just, the upper northern teams just beat them out on semifinal days. But I think that there's a level of, I don't want to call it payback, but it's our turn. And you saw that in, Georgia, Tampa, South Carolina, Alabama before they lost today. A different level of swagger when they came here. Like, okay, we have something to prove, and we're going to use this to announce it to the world, which is pretty cool.
And a team like Tampa, they've been the number 1 seed, didn't make out of pool play last year, eliminated by the eventual champion. So they feel like they got that chip on their shoulder. We saw it today with that 14-goal output. Alabama, big win yesterday, but big wins like that on game one, like the upset wins, they might take a lot out of you. You know, it's a very emotional game. You put a lot into it. It's hard to replicate,
especially after a long day or two of travel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you got to do that not just the next night, the next afternoon. Quick turnaround for Alabama, and we saw kind of the longevity of that game eventually caught up to them. They were falling to Farmingdale.
Yeah. And again, this is no disrespect to Alabama as well. Farmingdale just plays a very different style of game. And when you've got a New York in-your-face, grind-it-out style, do not give you any time and space against a team that was coming off a very good win yesterday, but maybe a little bit tired from the trip, a little bit on a high from the win, and maybe not have experienced a game like Farmingdale.
Yeah,
right. That's that's a whole other level.
Also, something else I noticed when I watched Farmingdale, Alabama, and then my first game yesterday was Auburn Bonnies. Two matchups where they never saw each other during the season. They haven't probably saw each other ever, yet they battled each other as if they've been lifelong conference rivals. Mm-hmm. So you saw two teams that never saw each other, but something to prove against one another, and the chippiness was there as if they've been battling forever, these two teams. Yet, first time they've seen each other.
I would agree, and I talked to a few of the coaches afterwards. And the coaches, especially those that were on the losing end of that, they thought that one of the big lessons learned coming out of this was, okay, boys, this is what better looks like. This is what we need to do going into next season, right? More practice time. We can't take time off in the summer. When we get back to school, maybe we don't go as hard in Greek life, all those types of things. And it's, if we want to be up at that next level, that's what it looks like, right? So, I mean, there's some good lessons learned coming out of here.
And then your travels throughout this tournament, Mark, any feedback you're gathering, whether it be players, parents, coaches throughout it's only been 2 days, got a long way to go, but anything you've been gathering so far?
I think the focus that we have are really two key areas. One is it's the play on the ice. And a lot of times that takes care of itself. The broader thing that we focus on is the overall experience. And for the lion's share of these players, if not all of them, they're not going to play professionally after college. So this is it for them. And, I've always said, with John and Scott and others, we want to give them the best experience so that when they get together in 20 years, this is what they remember. And everybody keeps coming up to us year after year saying, I could never imagine this experience outside of playing D1, NCAA D1. The experience that we're getting here, creating lifelong memories. I mean, when you guys do the interviews after the game, and I'm standing here watching the other players cheering on the player and the coach is getting interviewed, and the parents videoing them, and a few of them crying. I saw a grandmother come up and give their grandson a hug with tears in her eyes. And I was walking with one of the game pucks. So I went up to him. I said, are you his grandmother? Yes, here's a game puck. She just started crying, right? It's just something like that, which gives us added incentive to keep doing what we're doing. I mean, you said the backdrop here is better. The 4 trophies are just spectacular, right? And someone walking away with those. We'll be ready to make an announcement tomorrow. We've got something special planned for the weekend that we've been working on with the NHL. It's just those types of things that we'll continue to do to enhance the overall experience for the players.
Yeah, like you said, give them something that they won't forget. And just before Bonaventure beating Quinnipiac, the goalie, the coach being interviewed, the whole team was this whole area. Now it's empty. Everyone's gone.
Right.
Everyone's going home for the day, but it was all packed. But the whole team came out right out of the locker room to watch it. They were all making noise in the background. So everyone's getting involved. So a good 2 days so far, but Mark, a long way to go. We got D2 showing up tomorrow, then D3 following them.
I think it was great on the part of Scott and John to take the divisions and just sort of bring them in over the course of the few days, right? So we had D1 one day kicking off, women's another day kicking off, D2 tomorrow kicking off pool play, Saturday with D3 kicking off. That allows us to really focus the experience on those divisions much better than we have in the past, where everybody came in mass. And, day 1 and day 2 for D1 was really special. Then kicking off the women today and then tomorrow is going to be special. D2 will have their time tomorrow as we move forward. And the fact that, we get to the semifinals for D1 and women on Saturday, and then the finals on Sunday, while we're still going through pool play. For the others, it's going to be a massive fan experience here. I mean, we'll have 47, 48 teams here playing throughout the weekend.
Yeah,
which is going to be nutty with all of the hockey going on, the fans going on, the experience that we're going to show them here, with the NHL, coupled with, seeing all the rinks filled, the fact that, for this is the first year, we've done Black Dog for free, so we're getting the experience out to a far greater number of people, which is great.
Yeah, so no, like Scott's been described it, Scott Solomon, it's like the slope. It starts off slow, and then we're going to peak up during the weekend when everyone shows up, and then we'll calm at the end when we finish up with D2 and D3 national champions on next Wednesday. But Mark, before we close out the day, any final remarks before we pack it up for day 2 and then go into day 3 tomorrow?
Every year as we continue to grow and scale this, it gets more complex. And we've been able to we're a volunteer-based organization. And I cannot thank people enough for coming in and volunteering their time to help out, whether it's me, my board, Scott and the leadership team, but also the, 30 or 40 people that we have here that are just helping, minute by minute to help us make it as smooth as possible. Rock calls it, it's the proverbial duck on a pond. As long as everybody thinks things are going smoothly, don't look behind the curtain or the water. Yeah. But I can't thank the interns, the volunteers, the broadcasters, the media team, everybody just doing behind the scenes, the registration that's going. Everything has just been so smooth. And that leads to a phenomenal experience for the players, which is what is most paramount.
So the AAU College Hockey Chairman, Mark Purowitz, thank you for taking the time, talking about day 2 here at the tournament. We got a long way to go as that will wrap up day 2. We got a lot of important games. Division 1 pool play comes to an end tomorrow. Women's carries on. Division 2 starts up. So a long schedule ahead. Again, Mark Purowitz, the AAU College Hockey Chairman. My name is Jordan DeLuciano. Good night. Thanks for joining us, watching along with Siobhan Nolan's interviews, the podcast, and on Black Dog. And we will see you all tomorrow.